The city hummed below, a restless beast of light and sound. But up here, it was just us. Julian's hand brushed mine, his fingers trembling as they laced through my own. His hazel eyes caught the moonlight, and for a moment, I forgot the weight of my name. Elliot Carver, the presumed golden son of a real estate dynasty. Elliot, he whispered, voice low and raw. You make me feel like I'm enough. My heart surged, a reckless tide crashing against the walls I'd built over years of expectations. I leaned closer, our lips inches apart, the world fading until it was just him. Julian Reyes, the quiet artist who'd stumbled into my life 6 months ago at a gallery opening in Soho. We'd met by chance, or so I thought. I was there to appease my mother, schmoozing collectors to secure another deal for Carver Enterprises. Julian was displaying his work, vivid paintings of urban decay and hope, each stroke a story of resilience. I'd been drawn to him instantly, not just for his talent, but for the way he saw the world, unfiltered, honest, alive. He didn't know I was a Carver then, and I didn't tell him. For once, I wanted to be seen as just Elliot. That night on the rooftop, as the autumn air nipped at our skin, I confessed everything, me fears of failing my family, the suffocating weight of being the heir. Julian listened, his silence a safe harbor. When he finally spoke, his words were a lifeline. You're more than their legacy. Elliot, you're you. I kissed him then, fierce and unguarded, the city sprawling beneath us like a promise we'd write together. But promises break. The next morning, my birthday, the truth gutted me. My father called me into his office, his face a mask of cold pragmatism. Elliot, you're not my biological son, he said, voice flat, as if discussing a business merger. You were adopted to secure the family image. Julian is the true heir, me son, with a woman I loved before your mother. The room spun. Julian, my Julian, was the rightful heir to everything I'd been raised to inherit. Worse, he'd known. Last night, when he held me, when he kissed me, he'd known. I stumbled out, my chest tight, and found Julian waiting in the hallway. His eyes were red, his hands stuffed into his jacket pockets. Elliot, I didn't know how to tell you, he said, voice breaking. I only found out a month ago. I wanted to protect you. Protect me. The words felt like a betrayal, each one a knife twisting deeper. I turned away, unable to look at him, the man who'd owned my heart and now my legacy. The days that followed were a blur of rage and grief. I moved out of the penthouse, crashing in a cramped Brooklyn apartment owned by my friend Mia, a fiercely loyal barista with a knack for reading people. You look like you've been hit by a truck, she said, shoving a coffee into my hands. I told her everything, Julian. The airship, the lies. She listened, then said, you're allowed to be mad, Elliot, but don't let this define you. You're not just a Carver pawn. Her words stuck, but they didn't erase the ache. I avoided Julian's calls, his texts, his pleas to meet. Yet, I couldn't escape him entirely. Carver Enterprises was everywhere: billboards, news articles, gala invitations. My father, Richard Carver, was a titan, and now Julian was his shadow, stepping into a role I'd been groomed for my entire life. The betrayal stung deeper because I still loved him. Every night, I replayed our moments, the way he'd laugh at my terrible jokes, the way his hand fit perfectly in mine. A week later, I saw him at a charity gala in Midtown. I'd gone to prove I could face the world. But there he was, in a tailored suit, shaking hands with investors. He looked like he belonged, but his eyes found mine across the room, raw and searching. My heart lurched, but I turned away, diving into conversation with a stranger. I wouldn't let him see me break. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the rooftop, please. It was Julian. Against my better judgment, I went. He stood there, the city glittering behind him, his face a map of guilt and longing. I didn't want this, he said. I didn't ask to be his son. But I can't lose you, Elliot. His voice cracked, and for a moment, I wanted to believe him. But the truth was a chasm between us. You knew, I said, my voice cold. And you let me fall for you anyway. I walked away, leaving him in the moonlight, my heart splintering with every step. The city felt different now, its pulse no longer mine. I threw myself into work, taking a job at a small nonprofit in Brooklyn, helping at-risk youth through art programs. It was a far cry from the boardrooms of Carver Enterprises, but it felt real. I met kids like Leo, a 17-year-old trans teen with a sharp wit and a guarded heart. He reminded me of myself trying to carve a place in a world that felt rigged. You ever feel like you're not enough? He asked one day, sketching a mural. I nodded, thinking of Julian, of the empire I'd lost. All the time. I said, but you keep going. You find people who see you for you. His words echoed in my mind when I ran into Julian again, this time at a coffee shop in Williamsburg. He looked tired, the weight of his new role etched into his face. Elliot, he said, standing too close. I'm trying to fix this. I don't want the company if it means losing you. His sincerity hit me like a wave, but I couldn't trust it. Not yet. You don't get to choose both, I said, walking out, my coffee cold in my hand. But doubt crept in. What if he meant it? What if love could bridge the gap between us? I didn't have answers, only questions that kept me up at night, staring at the ceiling of Mia's apartment, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. Mia noticed my struggle. You're not moving on, Elliot, she said one evening, tossing a pizza box onto her coffee table. You're stuck in this limbo because you haven't faced him. Really faced him. She was right. But the idea of confronting Julian felt like stepping into a storm. I'd seen him on the news, polished and poised, announcing a new Carver Enterprises project. He was thriving, while I was scraping by, teaching kids to paint their pain into something beautiful. One afternoon, Leo dragged me to an art fair in Dumbo. You need to see what's out there, he said, his eyes bright with the kind of hope I'd lost. The fair was a kaleidoscope of color and sound, artists hawking their work under the Brooklyn Bridge's shadow. I was admiring a sculpture when I heard his voice. Elliot. Julian stood there, holding a canvas bag, looking less like an heir and more like the artist I'd met months ago. His hair was longer, curling at the edges, and his eyes held a quiet desperation. I didn't know you'd be here, he said, stepping closer. The crowd faded, and it was just us, the air heavy with unspoken words. I've been trying to find you. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, to demand why he'd kept the truth from me. But all I managed was, you're doing well. I saw you on TV. His face fell, and he shook his head. It's not what I wanted. None of this is. He told me he'd been fighting my father, our father, to redefine the company's legacy. Julian wanted to redirect funds to community projects, to honor the city that raised him, not just exploit it. I thought I could do this without you, he said, voice low. But I can't. I need you, Elliot. Not as a Carver, but as you. His words cracked something open in me, but the hurt was still raw. You broke me, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away, leaving him standing there, the bridge looming behind him like a silent judge. Back at Mia's, I couldn't shake the encounter. Leo's mural was taking shape at the nonprofit, a vibrant depiction of chosen family, and it made me think of Julian's words. Was he trying to build something good, or was it just guilt? I didn't know, but I couldn't keep running. I agreed to meet him again, this time at a quiet diner in the East Village. The fluorescent lights buzzed as we sat across from each other, coffee cups untouched. I was scared, Julian admitted, his hands fidgeting with a napkin. When I found out I was Richard's son, I didn't want it. I didn't want to take anything from you. But he pressured me, said it was my duty. He looked up, eyes pleading. I should have told you that night on the rooftop. I was a coward. His honesty disarmed me, but it didn't erase the betrayal. You let me believe we were equals, I said. You let me love you, knowing you'd take everything. He leaned forward, voice urgent. I didn't take anything. I'm trying to give it back to you, to the city. I want us to do this together. The idea was tempting, a flicker of the future we dreamed of. But trust was a fragile thing. I left the diner without promising anything, my heart torn between hope and fear. The nonprofit became my refuge. Leo and the other kids grounded me, their resilience a mirror to my own. One day, Leo showed me a letter he'd written to his estranged parents, pouring out his truth as a trans teen. "I don't know if they'll read it," he said, but I had to try. His courage shamed me. I'd been hiding from Julian, from the truth, from myself. If Leo could face his fears, so could I. I called Julian and asked him to meet me at the rooftop again. The city sparkled below, just as it had that night before my birthday. He looked nervous, his hands shoved into his pockets. "I'm not here to forgive you," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm tired of running. Tell me why I should trust you." He took a deep breath, and for the next hour, he laid it all bare: his fears, his plans, his love for me. He'd been meeting with community leaders, redirecting Carver funds to affordable housing and youth programs. "I don't want to be Richard's son," he said. "I want to be the man you believed in." I didn't have answers, but I felt the stirrings of something new: hope, maybe, or the ghost of love. We stood there, the city alive beneath us, and for the first time in months, I didn't walk away. We started small coffee dates, long walks through Central Park, conversations that skirted the edges of our past. Julian was different now, less guarded, more open about the pressure of being Richard Carver's son. "He wants me to be him," Julian said one afternoon, tossing a pebble into the Bethesda fountain. "But I'm not. I want to build something real, something that matters." His passion was infectious, and I found myself drawn to it, to him, despite the scars. At the nonprofit, Leo's mural was nearly complete, a testament to resilience and chosen family. He'd invited his parents to see it, a bold move that left him jittery. "What if they don't come?" he asked, his voice small. I thought of Julian, of the risk of opening my heart again. "Then you keep painting," I said. "You keep showing the world who you are." He nodded, and I realized I was talking to myself as much as to him. Julian started showing up at the nonprofit, not as a Carver heir, but as an artist. He taught workshops, his hands covered in paint as he guided kids through their own creations. Watching him with Leo, laughing and encouraging, reminded me of the man I'd fallen for. One day, he caught me staring and smiled, a quiet promise in his eyes. "I'm not going anywhere, Elliot," he said. My heart stuttered, but I didn't look away. The gala season loomed, and with it, a Carver Enterprises event that Julian couldn't avoid. He asked me to come, not as a date, but as a partner in his vision. "I'm announcing a new initiative," he said, eyes bright. "Affordable housing in underserved neighborhoods. I want you there." I hesitated, the memory of last year's gala still sharp, but something in his voice made me say yes. The night of the gala, I stood in a borrowed suit, feeling out of place among Manhattan's elite. Julian took the stage, his presence commanding yet humble. He spoke of legacy, not as wealth, but as impact, unveiling plans to fund community centers and housing projects. The crowd applauded, but his eyes found mine, and I knew this was for us, for the future we'd once dreamed of. After, he pulled me aside, his hand warm on my arm. "I meant every word," he said. "I'm doing this for you, for us." I wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered. Later, as we stood on a balcony overlooking the city, I asked, "What happens when your father pushes back?" "He always does." Julian's jaw tightened. "He already has. But I'm not backing down. I'm not him, Elliot." His voice was fierce, and for the first time, I saw the fight in him, not for power, but for something bigger. Back in Brooklyn, Leo's parents came to see his mural. They didn't stay long, but they listened as he explained his work, his truth. When they left, Leo cried, a mix of relief and pain. "They didn't hate it," he said, and I hugged him, proud of his courage. It made me think of Julian's fight, of my own. Maybe love wasn't about erasing the past, but building something new from its ashes. Julian and I grew closer, but the shadow of Carver Enterprises loomed. Richard called me one day, his voice cold. "You're distracting him," he said. "Julian has a legacy to uphold. Don't ruin it." The words cut deep, reminding me of my place or lack of it in the Carver world. I didn't tell Julian about the call, but it fueled my doubts. Was I holding him back? Or was he holding on to me out of guilt? One night, Julian showed up at Mia's apartment, rain-soaked and determined. "I'm done hiding," he said, pulling me outside. Under a street lamp, he kissed me, fierce and unapologetic, the rain blurring the world around us. "I love you, Elliot," he said. "I don't care about the company, the money, any of it. I just want you." My heart roared, but fear whispered, could I trust him? Could we outrun the legacy that had torn us apart? We spent evenings at the nonprofit, painting with Leo and the other kids, their laughter a balm for my doubts. Julian was all in, funding supplies out of his own pocket, his hands as paint-stained as mine. One night, as we cleaned up, he grabbed my hand, pulling me into a quiet corner. "I'm meeting with the board tomorrow," he said, his voice steady but laced with nerves. "I'm proposing a complete shiftless profit. More impact. I need you to know I'm serious." His eyes searched mine, and I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The board meeting was a battle. Julian texted me afterward, exhausted but triumphant. "They're resistant, but I got the housing project approved." He wrote, "This is for us." I wanted to celebrate, but Richard's words echoed in my mind. "You're distracting him." I pushed the thought away, focusing on the kids, on Leo's mural, now a beacon in the community center. He'd named it Family Found, a nod to the bonds we'd built. I wondered if Julian and I could find that too. A week later, disaster struck. A tabloid published a story about Julian, outing him as Richard's son and speculating about our relationship. The headline screamed, "Carver Heir's secret romance, love or leverage." My stomach dropped as I read it, the words twisting our love into something transactional. Julian called me, frantic. "I didn't know they were digging," he said. "I'll fix this." But the damage was done. Reporters hounded me, camping outside Mia's apartment. Their questions a relentless assault. "Are you using Julian to reclaim the Carver empire?" I hid at the nonprofit, but the kids had seen the article. Leo, ever blunt, asked, "Is it true? Are you guys like a thing?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, we are. Or we're trying to be." He grinned, unbothered. "Cool. You deserve to be happy." His acceptance steadied me, but the world outside was less kind. Richard called Julian, demanding he distance himself from me to protect the family name. Julian refused, but the pressure was mounting. We met at a quiet park in Queens, away from the city's glare. Julian looked worn. His usual spark dimmed. "I'm fighting for us," he said, his voice raw. "But it's hard. Elliot, my father's ruthless." I took his hand, my own fears bubbling up. "What if we're not enough?" I asked. He pulled me close, his breath warm against my cheek. "We are. We have to be." His kiss was a promise, but the tabloid's words lingered, love or leverage. Mia organized a community event to unveil Leo's mural, a bright spot amid the chaos. Julian and I stood together, watching as the kids presented their work to a small crowd. Leo spoke, his voice steady, about finding family in unexpected places. I glanced at Julian, his eyes shining with pride, and felt a surge of hope. Maybe we could rewrite our story, just like Leo had. But Richard had other plans. He summoned Julian to a private meeting, and when Julian returned, he was shaken. "He wants me to step down," he said, pacing Mia's living room. "He says I'm too distracted, that I'm ruining the company." I froze, Richard's warning ringing in my ears. "What did you say?" I asked. Julian stopped, his eyes fierce. I told him no. I told him I'm building something better. With you. My heart swelled, but fear clawed at me. Richard Carver didn't lose. That night, we lay in my bed. The cities hum a distant lullaby. Julian traced circles on my palm. His voice soft. I don't know what's coming, he said, but I know I want you in it. I kissed him, letting myself believe, if only for a moment, that love could outlast legacy. But deep down, I knew the storm was coming, and it would test everything we'd fought for. Richard escalated his campaign. He froze Julian's access to company funds, stalling the housing project. The media frenzy grew, painting Julian as a reckless heir and me as the scheming outsider. At the nonprofit, the kids rallied around us. Leo most of all. You two are like superheroes, he said, grinning, fighting the big bad empire. I laughed, but the weight was crushing. Julian was unraveling, torn between his vision and his father's demands. One night, Julian showed up at Mia's, his face pale. He's giving me an ultimatum, he said. Step down or he'll ruin you. Elliot. He'll drag your name through the mud. Make it impossible for you to work. My blood ran cold. Richard had the power to do it, and he knew it. What do you want to do? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear. Julian took my hands, his grip fierce. I want to fight. For us. For the kids. For everything we believe in. We devised a plan. Julian would call a press conference, laying bare the truth about Carver Enterprises, its greed, its manipulation, its disregard for the city it claimed to serve. I'd stand with him, not as a Carver, but as a man who believed in a better future. The night before, we sat on the rooftop, the city sprawling below. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice barely audible. Julian pulled me close, his lips brushing my forehead. Me too. But we're in this together. His words anchored me, and for the first time, I believed we could win. The press conference was chaos. Cameras flashed as Julian took the podium, his voice steady as he exposed Richard's tactics. This company was built on this city's back, he said, but it's time to give back. He outlined his vision: housing, community centers, opportunities for those left behind. I stood beside him, my heart pounding, as he reached for my hand. This is personal, he said, looking at me. Because love is worth fighting for. The crowd murmured, some skeptical, others moved. I saw Leo in the back, cheering, his mural a silent backdrop on a screen. Richard was furious. He stormed the stage, his face a mask of rage. You're no son of mine. He spat at Julian. The words cut, but Julian stood tall. I don't want to be, he said. I want to be better. The crowd erupted, and in that moment, I knew we'd won not the empire, but something greater. We'd chosen each other, chosen love, chosen a legacy worth building. Months later, Julian stepped down from Carver Enterprises, leaving Richard to grapple with a board that no longer trusted him. We started a foundation together, funding art programs and housing initiatives, with Leo as our first youth ambassador. The city embraced us, not as heirs, but as builders of something new. On my 26th birthday, we stood on the rooftop again, the carved bench still bearing its inscription, Love dares to rewrite fate. Julian kissed me, slow and sure, and I knew we'd done just that. Our love wasn't perfect. It was scarred, tested, but real. And in the end, that was enough.